You ever wake up from a dream that's so weird, so out there that you just shake your head and think, what was that all about? Of course you have. We all have. But what if those bizarre, chaotic stories our minds cook up at night aren't random noise at all? What if they're actually speaking a kind of secret language, a code that, if we could just crack it, would show us what we really want? Okay, let's get into it.
To get our heads around this secret language, we're going to start with a puzzle. This is from a real dream Sigmund Freud had back in 1895 about a patient of his named Irma. And as you can see, the dream is just a total jumble. You've got his patient accusing him, these weird medical details, other doctors showing up with their own strange ideas. It just feels chaotic and, honestly, pretty meaningless.
And that's the big question, right? What on earth could this nonsense possibly mean? It really seems like just static from a sleeping brain. But Freud was convinced it was a message. And for the next few minutes, you and I are going to crack the code together.
Now, to solve this mystery, first we have to get a handle on the really radical and at the time, totally game-changing idea that Freud put forward about what all dreams are. It's a claim that pretty much flips our normal understanding of dreams completely on its head. So here's the core of it. Freud said that every single dream, no matter how strange or confusing or even how terrifying, is actually a wish fulfillment. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds nuts, right? The Irma dream felt anxious and stressful. And what about nightmares? How could a dream where you're being chased by a monster possibly be a wish coming true? Well, this is where that secret language comes into play.
Freud said every dream has two layers. First, you've got the manifest content. That's the weird story you actually remember when you wake up. The whole Irma dream. But hiding underneath that is the latent content. That's the real hidden meaning of the dream. And that latent content, Freud argued, is always a wish. So the dream's main job is to disguise that wish, to wrap it up in a strange story so our conscious mind doesn't recognize it.
So, how does the mind do that? How does it disguise a wish so cleverly? Well, it uses a process Freud called the dream work. You can think of it like a set of secret encryption tools the mind uses to turn that hidden wish into the bizarre story we remember. Let's look at the two main tools in its toolbox.
The first tool is called condensation. This is kind of like a political cartoon, where a single drawing of a person might represent an entire government, a specific policy, and a recent scandal all at once. Dreams do the same thing. They pack tons of meaning into one single simple image. The second tool is displacement. This is where the dream pulls a little trick. It takes all the emotion that's attached to one really important idea and shifts it onto something that seems totally random and unimportant. It's a way of hiding what really matters by making us look at something else.
Let's start with maybe the single weirdest detail in the whole dream. At one point, Freud sees the chemical formula for something called trimethylamine printed in bold letters. I mean, talk about random, right? But using his method of free association, he just started following the breadcrumbs.
So how does this chemical connect to anything? Well, trimethylamine reminded Freud of a conversation he'd had with a friend about sexual chemistry. That in turn got him thinking about Irma herself, who was a young widow. Her widowhood meant she was living in a state of sexual frustration, and that was a problem that Freud, as her doctor, could never solve. So that chemical symbol was a condensed code for an incurable part of Irma's problem, something that, conveniently, wasn't Freud's fault.
All right, next clue. The dream includes a thought that maybe Irma's problems were caused by an injection she got from an unclean syringe, probably from Freud's colleague, Otto. Again, a super specific and odd detail, so where did that come from?
This is a textbook example of displacement in action. The dream literally shifts the blame for Irma's sickness away from Freud and dumps it squarely onto his friend Otto. In real life, Freud was feeling a little anxious about his own performance as a doctor, so the dream defends him by pointing the finger somewhere else. It shifts that heavy feeling of blame onto a symbolic scapegoat.
And here's the big reveal. When you decode all the clues using condensation and displacement, you realize that this confusing, anxious dream wasn't really about Irma at all. It was one big, elaborate wish fulfillment for Freud. Every single bizarre twist and turn was working to deliver one single, powerful, hidden message. I am not to blame for this. I'm a good doctor.
Okay, so we've cracked the code on one specific dream. But what's so powerful about this idea is what it means for all of us. If our dreams are all just wishes in disguise, then what are our dreams trying to tell us about our own hidden desires?
This is where it gets really interesting. Freud started to believe that our minds often use a kind of universal symbolic language, especially for things we're not supposed to talk about, like sex. So for example, dreaming of a king and a queen often symbolizes your parents.
An activity, like climbing stairs, can be a symbol for the sexual act, and objects like a room or a box can stand in for the female body, while long, sharp things like sticks or knives can symbolize the male. It's like a secret vocabulary that our unconscious mind uses.
And where do the deepest, most powerful of these wishes come from? Freud's answer was pretty shocking. He said that the big wishes that fuel our dreams very often don't come from our adult lives. Instead, they're the powerful, primal, and often forbidden desires from our earliest childhood. Our dreams, in a way, let our inner child come out and play, expressing wishes we might have forgotten about or pushed down a long time ago.
So, the next time you wake up from some crazy dream, don't just brush it off as random garbage. Ask yourself, if this confusing story was actually a secret message, a cleverly disguised wish from the deepest part of who I am, what wish was my last dream hiding?